I bind because it kind of quiets that dysphoria that I get. I bind because it makes me feel safer when I'm outside. I bind because I think I look a lot hotter when I'm in a binder than when I'm not.
I started binding about a year ago.
2 years.
Maybe 8 months ago.
6 years.
I first started binding when I was a teenager in college.
Almost 5.5 years I binded straight.
You kind of just wear it like a tank top and, it just totally flattens your chest.
I think I had like double Ds, and I would put on the binder and it would probably go down 2 sizes just because it's so tight and it's like a suction cup almost. It's just like holding everything tightly together.
So this was the one that I got during my freshman year of college. You can see it's very, very, very stretched out and like, you can see through it.
I'm not sure how this whole happened, but it's there.
I like to be androgynous, so I feel like this helps me achieve that.
I don't know, I was just really uncomfortable in t-shirts, and I wear a lot of button shirts.
Pretty open about it because I complain about it a lot. I also have friends who are like in the same situation where they also can't like afford top surgery.
It allowed me to go out into public with, a shirt on and just be able to seen as a guy because, it was before top surgery.
If I didn't have my binder, I couldn't function. I just couldn't go out. I couldn't have dinner with friends. I couldn't talk to family because I wasn't the Renee the whole Renee, or as close as to the whole Renee I could be without my binder with me.
I've had dysphoria with my breasts since they grew in. I tried to use like regular tape to like tape them down. So I was like, what's happening? What is this little knot on my chest?
I have a lot of fear of, getting assaulted or just being stared at in public because like I definitely don't like to leave my apartment without my binder, even to go to like the corner store to buy like a cup of coffee.
When you put it on and it's what you want and what you need, it's the most like euphoric feeling. And you're like, yes, I'm complete.
And seeing kind of a silhouette that looks right instead of these weird lumps in front of me.
They tell you to bind correctly or it'll hurt, but I feel like binding just doesn't feel good at all.
It was 77 degrees yesterday in New York, and I was just, sweat was pouring down my body.
Like it feels really good to take it off.
When people think about binding, they might think it's like very constricting, something that's painful. Why would you want to do that to your body? But it's just a way to kind of connect our mind to our body.
I didn't want to look like or feel like I had breasts. Even though binding does help give that appearance that they are gone, it is a strong reminder that they are there.
Sometimes you're going to put that binder on and it's not going to change anything for you. And it's okay to have those moments.
There's not a lot of discussions, especially outside of the trans community, about binding. And I think that more people should talk about it, and we should be allowed to be more open about it and feel more free having these discussions.
The first thing about binding is getting yourself a good binder. Binding is not something that your body is meant for. Think about how good it feels to take a bra off at the end of the day. Now think about what that feels like when you have literal compression that is pushing your body against itself. It is recommended that you only wear a binder for 6 to 8 hours a day. That's not possible for everyone. It wasn't possible for me because I start class 9, 10 in the morning and then I'm out for class for the rest of the day doing extracurriculars. I had a lot of instances where I was out late with friends and I was having a really good time and enjoying myself, but I couldn't stop thinking about like, I'm so uncomfortable, I want to take my binder off. Please listen to your body. When it's saying that it hurts and something is wrong, something is probably wrong. There are all sorts of things that can happen if you bind for too long at a time. There's a lot of stuff on media that is really, really problematic and hurtful to trans communities about binding with stuff like duct tape that is incredibly bad for your body. It doesn't work nearly as well as a binder. There are all sorts of resources on how to get a binder. There are countless organizations that will ship you a free one. So there are ways to find them for free, even if you don't have any any access to be able to pay for them. Never bind with more than one binder at a time. I know some people who will put on 2 binders because they have bigger chests. I know this sounds like a good idea. It's not. You can't breathe. And that can actually affect your top surgery results. That's one of the things that I've actually been able to use to convince some people out of binding unhealthily, because it can actually do things to your breast tissue so that they stretch out, and you might have worse results for your top surgery if you are eventually able to have that. In terms of top surgery, my number 1 advice is find a surgeon that you feel comfortable with. I chose my surgeon because she took my insurance and because I felt safe in her office. Everyone was really kind to me. They didn't require me to pretend to be a boy, and they were fine with me using they, them pronouns. They treated it like an exciting, happy thing instead of like, oh, you're having a surgery, like, good, you know? It really made me feel good and, you know, excited about something that I was excited about. And insurance is gonna suck. I apologize to any of you who insurance screws over. Push through it and ultimately make the decision that's best for you. And don't let anybody else make that decision.
I think there's a huge overlap between a queer identity and a disabled identity. And I've been open about having a queer identity since I was about 12 years old, but I didn't really start identifying as disabled until I kind of got it confirmed that my issues were to be more or less permanent. And I felt that coming to terms with daring to identify in a certain way definitely included quite a similar journey. There is this acknowledgement with using an identifying label as disabled or queer that society isn't really built to fit you, and you sort of have to carve out a place for yourself, and you have to find your community. And there is both a kind of resistance in that, but also a kind of, sometimes at least, a kind of sadness in acknowledging that. But it's not necessarily a permanent sadness, it's more of a passing sadness that you can actually gain quite a lot of strength and empowerment from, because acknowledging that you have to carve out your own place and then succeeding in carving out your own place, or succeeding in finding a community that carves out its own place, can be quite empowering and a rather joyful experience, which I found with both. I've also found that there's a lot of overlap in how my EDS affects me and how my gender dysphoria affected me, which has kind of led me to thinking about dysphoria as a potential disability. For example, when binding, I couldn't really bind due to chronic pain and my EDS making my chest incredibly flexible. So my rib cage kind of compressed too much within a binder, and it kind of became the ace bandages thing, but even with really good binders. But binding restricts your movement and restricts your day-to-day life in a way that I would say is quite similar to what my EDS does. And not being able to go to the gym, not really daring to speak in public, not really having the ability to navigate life the way other people do, can be quite disabling. Obviously then, gender dysphoria for some people will be a disability. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. And I think that by acknowledging that, we can have a greater overlap between the disabled community and the trans community especially. And I think both communities could really benefit from being a bit more critical of the norms that makes us want to separate them. Because admittedly, I think to some extent it is quite, it can be a bit ableist, insisting that dysphoria cannot be disabling. And to some extent, I think it can be a bit transphobic, claiming that dysphoria cannot be bad enough to be disabling. So I think we kind of need to work in both directions there. Not to say that like everyone in either camp says that, but just things I've heard.
And this might be applicable to other communities as well.
I think a lot of marginalized groups can really benefit from being a bit more in tune with what other people outside of their own specific community are telling them.